We teamed up on the Master B2B series for one very important reason, to cut through the noise.
It's what we saw in retail. Just talk to Sears and JCPenney and Macy's and all these other big box stores and department stores that are suffering.
The reality is this is a fairly new entrant into the B2B space.
Now, let's talk about third-party marketplaces. Every manufacturer should be on Amazon and Amazon Business.
I always say that when you enter a relationship with Amazon, you're entering what I call a manipulationship.
Wrong. It's a tiny percentage of their sales. I'm sorry, it's overblown. You should sell your product line on Amazon.
One big difference, Brian. Amazon controls all the data. And by the way, they control your customer relationship.
What can practitioners use in the field today? How do they make decisions about the right marketing, the right platform, the right channels to sell on?
Nobody knows all the answers here, so we're going to get to the truth by having the debates.
Welcome to the Master B2B Unwebinar series. Please note that this session will be recorded and available on demand within a few days. We'll send an email about that soon. You can submit your questions as well as upvote other attendees' questions using the Q&A tool at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you have any technical issues during today's session, please use the chat tool and select all panelists, and one of our team members will assist you. Please give us one moment while we begin the recording. And now, Andy Hoar and Brian Beck.
Welcome to Master B2B, our Unwebinar series. My name is Brian Beck, and I'm here with Andy Hoar, and I'm excited, Andy. We haven't done this in quite some time. This is an Unwebinar debate, and we have a hot topic we're going to be talking about. But before we get into all that, let me introduce you to my partner in this thought leadership series, Mr. Andy Hoar. 7 years leading B2B e-commerce at Forrester Research. Longtime Silicon Valley veteran and my co-founder in the Master B2B series, also the CEO of Paradigm, where they do e-commerce platform evaluations and other types of technology evaluations. Andy, good to be back on an Unwebinar with you. It's been a while.
Yeah, good to be here as well. And Brian. Oh, and yeah, so for those who don't know Brian, I'm sure everybody knows Brian at this point, but Brian's been a systems integrator. He's been a practitioner on both the B2B side and the B2C side. He wrote a book called $1 Billion B2B E-commerce. By the way, are you going to update that at some point? Or?
I will, yes, it's in progress.
Okay. And again, my partner as well in this thought leadership series.
Yep.
And we've got a good one today. We always have good ones, but I'm really looking forward to this one. It's about Gen AI, because we love talking about Gen AI, as you know.
Yes.
It just becomes even more pervasive by the day. And as it ages, we're starting to see more use cases. We're also seeing some limitations, but we're going to talk about today is who should own it in the organization.
Yes, that's right. And this is a debate, folks. So this is kind of how we started this whole Master B2B community and thought leadership series, is about bringing issues to light and really having honest and transparent debates about them. We've got a great group today that's going to be debating, 2 teams. And we have 3 rounds we're going to be going through today. At the end of each of our rounds, you'll have a chance to vote. And at the end of our webinar today, we will reveal who the winner is of the debate. I'm going to be leaning more towards IT, and Andy's going to be taking on team business. So we'll talk through those in just a moment. But as we said at the beginning of this, if you have any comments, questions, you want to throw some questions at the panelists, go ahead and submit them through our Q&A box there. We keep this fun and interactive. So we got a great group joining us today, Andy. I was looking through the names of people who are joining the webinar. We have 3M here, Jeffrey Hugerhide, Rian from Uline's here, Toyota's here, Imperial Supplies is here. My goodness, we have just a great list. Staples, Breakthrough Beverage, Fastenal, Stanley Black & Decker. Clearly, a lot of companies are trying to figure out how to leverage AI, in their Gen AI in their business. And so let's get into the issue a little bit. Go ahead, Andy.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring up the slide. Now, the question we're focused on here is who should own Gen AI in B2B, IT or the business? And Andy, when we say own, what exactly do we mean by own a Gen AI?
Yeah, I think it's really 2 things. One is, do you control the budget for it? Because in every organization, as we know, all roads lead to the cash. And the question is, who has the cash?
Right.
The old golden rule, whoever has the gold makes the rules. So, obviously budget. And the other thing is really final decision-making authority, because at some point there's going to be a trade-off, right? You have to decide A or B, and somebody has to make that decision. It can't be the CEO every time, at least not operationally. So we're going to discuss who has to make that decision. And so that's what we mean by
Right.
own: budget and responsibility.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with also, how and where it's used, like in terms of priority. So, well, let's start by defining what we mean by Gen AI. And one of the companies that's investing in this dramatically is Amazon. So you can see here on this slide, we have a definition we pulled from Amazon. Generative artificial intelligence, or Gen AI, is a type of AI that can create new content and ideas, including conversations, stories, images, videos, and music. AI technologies attempt to mimic human intelligence in non-traditional computing tasks like image recognition, natural language processing, and translation. And so I mean, it's essentially it's acting like a human, learning and acting like a human. And the industry has come out and said this technology has enormous potential. In fact, we found a study from Ernst and Young that talked about AI-driven productivity being set to produce a substantial lift, overall in the economy. They estimate a boost worth over $650 billion, lifting GDP by nearly 2.5% by 10 years from now. So, there's real impacts of this, and we hear so much buzz about this, Andy. What are some of the actual, sort of use cases? Like where are companies actually expecting to use this technology?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why there's so much potential around AI is because there's so many possible uses. And to kind of put a finer point on what you mentioned, the difference between AI, Gen AI, and other sort of software technologies that come along in the past is that Gen AI is really an agent as
Right.
opposed to a tool. A tool is something that I use to make myself more productive. An agent, a little different because an agent can actually do things on behalf of you, in place of you, instead of you. Now, this gets a
Mm-hmm.
little scary when you start thinking about it, but
Right.
we've seen some initial implementations where it's still in the tool stage, I think, because there's concerns about hallucination, et cetera. But here are 5 that Forrester pointed out that are pretty clear, like employee productivity. I think we've all used it to write an email or two,
Yep.
but there's all sorts of use cases popping up around that. Data analytics to analyze what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge management, of course, storing information, creating content. I don't know about you, but I've made a few images using Gen AI, specifically DALL-E or
Uh-huh.
Mid-Journey or whatever, instead of, having a graphic designer start from scratch. And then a
Yep.
big one is software development, design, and testing. I mean, it is a fact. I was talking to somebody at one of our events who said he actually should have a team of 5 people. He has a team of 1 person
Wow.
because he uses Gen AI to write the code that normally have to have
Wow.
a team of people do. Now he has
Mhm.
to check it, et cetera. But he said it's like having an exoskeleton for what he can now do with this technology.
Incredible.
Um,
Incredible.
and there are very, very specific use cases that you and I have identified over the
Yep.
years. And here's just a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned a few. One big one is online chatbots. I mean, I think there's one thing that's emerging in the search space about whether you're going to use a search box or you're going to do a natural language search with a chatbot. Search technologies actually power both of them in many cases because it's
Yeah.
about giving an answer to a question. There's documentation, foreign translation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, there are technologies now that can do 40, 50 languages, the drop of a hat, without any real issue. Writing code, we mentioned. Job descriptions. I know there
Yeah.
are a lot of people using them not to write job
Oh
descriptions
yeah. Yeah.
and even to hire people. So there's a whole bunch of stuff around that. And this is just a partial list.
Yep.
Um, and then, but there are some barriers that people are identifying. We said it's not, a smooth path. In fact, on the next slide, you'll see that we have barriers around things like people lacking technical skills. I mean, right now, you have to be able to create the prompts, and there's a bit of
Right.
training associated with that. Big one, lack of understanding where to apply Gen AI. I think people think of it like a tool or a toy. It reminds me of
Mhm.
drones. When drones first came out, there were things that kids played with, and now they're used for all sorts of things, good and bad. But a lot of things that people end up using that really change the way they operate start out as toys with kids in particular.
Yeah.
And you can argue ChatGPT has been a toy with a lot of kids because a lot of them use it to do their homework. Um, so there's data privacy and security concerns. I mean, when you're uploading, when you're asking questions of Chat GPT, for example, you're sharing information, which then goes into the hive mind, which could eventually be used at some point against you. A lot of companies are preventing their employees from actually doing it for that reason, where they're going to be sensitive information that's accidentally shared. Lack of a Gen AI strategy for sure. And then employee readiness. I mean, what do you tell somebody who's a content writer? Use Gen AI now to write all your content? Well, that's what I used to do. And so there can be change management components to this as well. But by far, the biggest issue, the biggest barrier that you and I have seen, and this is research that came out from McKinsey around this, which is lack of trust.
Yes.
People are very concerned about Gen AI. Now, there are a lot of theories about whether that's going to improve itself, where you can use Gen AI to check Gen AI.
Right.
I think they'll eventually solve this, but right now there's the issue of hallucination, as you mentioned earlier, inaccurate statements. There's stuff that we've heard people talk about in B2B, where it produces results that just aren't possible in B2B because it misunderstood in the language, for example. And in B2B, there's a lot of very precise language, a lot of jargon that you can't just throw to Gen AI and tell me, hey, what's a synonym for this word? It's not going to know because it's too specific. But the story of today is really about who should own it. And so there's a really interesting article that was published in the MIT Sloan Business Quarterly, I think is what it's called. It's kind of like MIT Sloan's business school version of HBR, Harvard Business Review. And it actually caused us to address this issue, which is who should be the head of generative AI? And what was interesting was they actually identified 5 key job responsibilities, and we'll share those with you now. It's steering the strategic direction, alignment of the AI work. Again, this is across the entire organization, right? So somebody's going to have to make sure all these things don't conflict with one another.
Right.
Establishing and sustaining a collaborative generative AI ecosystem. Again, it's going to require care and feeding. You can't just set it and forget it. Monitoring and evaluating generative AI experiments to inform best practices. This is certainly true. Gen AI, like most technologies, are really about test and experimentation. Identifying high impact use cases for scalability. Gen AI is going to require a lot of effort. It's also going to cost something at some point in terms of either the people or the software or some combination of the two. And so you're going to have to use it to achieve scale. Otherwise, it's not really worth using. And then lastly, overseeing generative AI integration across business units. Again, you can't have 25 different business units using generative AI in 25 different ways. So what we thought would be kind of interesting to explore here is who actually has generative AI in their title. And so before we jump into our debate, though, we thought we'd just highlight 3 people who we found on LinkedIn who actually have generative AI in their titles and really kind of run the range. So this gentleman on the left, James Calvert, he works for an advertising agency. He came up more on the creative end of things. He's more of a business-focused guy. And so he's more kind of on the business end of things. Ian Thomas works for Volvo Cars. Funny thing is, I'm talking about these people and we've never met them. They don't know why. He's the chairman of the generative AI group within Volvo. And he's kind of like halfway between business, halfway between tech. And then the last one is Jennifer Wong, who's the VP and Global Head of Strategy and Business Transformation, Data and AI. And it says literally responsible for AI and generative AI in a title. That's one hell of a long title. At Sanofi, the pharmaceutical company, and she comes from a very strong technical background, like MIT, et cetera. So you can see there's a real range here that they run, which I thought was a good setup for our conversation. But there was one thing they all had in common.
Which
You
was?
dig deep into their LinkedIn profiles. They all came up and have significant backgrounds in data science.
Interesting.
Which, you and I were talking beforehand. You said, well, that means IT, of course. I'm like, no, it doesn't. There are a lot of people on the business side who do data science too, Brian. But yeah, all 3 of them just coincidentally all had data science official titles and responsibilities earlier in their career around data science. So that might be a key to where this is going next.
Well, and of all the companies, the one closest to our B2B community is probably Sanofi of all the companies. And where did she come from? IT.
Yeah, nice try.
Well, man, I'm working it. All right. So no, that's a great setup, Andy. Thank you for that. And really, really good context for our discussion. And so we're going to go ahead and bring our our contenders in. We call them contenders, folks, because we have two teams that are going to vie for your votes. No payoffs. This is a fair election. We're going to go ahead and introduce those folks now. So our first contender is a repeat contender. Mr. Girish, the silencer Sahukar, has silenced many critics in his career. He is the VP of Digital Commerce at Dawn Foods, a multi-billion-dollar food products company. He's also spent time at Belk and curing Dr. Pepper, a long-time and very experienced person who knows the truth, Andy, about where Gen AI should be managed. Welcome, Silencer.
Thanks for having me.
And I believe you've contended against some of these folks in the past, including Miss Logan. We'll get into that. All right, our second contender joining us today is Sajid the Madman Mohammed. Madman, wow, he's mad about something. Now he's going to win the debate today. He's the senior director at Algolia, which is a leading site search firm and personalization firm. Has also been at Salesforce, accelerating digital ventures. TruePill, a long career. He knows his stuff, and he's going to prove why IT should be in charge of this. Welcome, Sajid.
Thanks, guys. Looking forward to getting my first win.
Yes, you are. All right, Mr. Andy, you want to introduce your business team there?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Sajid, you might be waiting a while though. Just to let you know. All right, so my team doesn't actually need an introduction, so I'm going to keep mine short and sweet because these are folks who have been here, done that. They've won several times. Brian, you know, because you've been on the losing side of their punches. So we'll start out with Brooke Lights Out Logan. So Brooke is 3-0. I think she's the only person we have in our entire community who's undefeated. She's I was going to say undefeated welterweight, but I don't even know what welterweight is. What the hell is that? But anyway. So Brooke is the head of unified commerce at Genuine Parts / Napa. And Brooke, again, has been on several of these in the past. Welcome, Brooke. Good to have you here.
Glad to be back. Ready to win.
Ready to win. That's right. And then joining the team as well is Stacy Hanks. Stacy the Hurricane Hanks. She's 1-1. She did lose once when she made a bad choice to pair up. I think it was with Girish, actually.
Oh,
It was.
Oh, you're fighting words already, man.
So she learned not to make that mistake again.
Oh, boy.
And so she's on the winning team as well. But Stacy is the vice president of global digital commerce at SureWorks. So good to have you both here, and can't wait to jump in.
Yeah, I think we're about at that point. You guys ready? Let's rumble. I love it. Round one, Andy, is yours. You, sir, have 8 minutes, and I encourage you to use them well. There you are.
All right, so we're jumping in on the technology component first because everybody agrees it's certainly a technology, that can be used to power, just like, other technologies like CMS and e-commerce, search and discovery, et cetera. So the question is, who should own this technology, right? So we're going to go to the IT team first, let them make the losing argument so we can then rebut and win. But, I guess you could say Gen AI is a technology like any other, and it has technology in the name, right? So, and you're going to argue it has to be, governed, et cetera. So let's go to you first, Girish. What's your best argument for why IT should own this as a technology?
Andy, you made the argument a few minutes ago when you were opening. You said whoever owns the budget. Guess what? This is just another technology. Yes, it's powerful technology, but it's just another technology. Who owns the technology? In most companies, it's the IT organization. They pay for it, they deploy it, they manage it, they maintain it, they retire it, right? And they have to worry about the access, security, roles, permissions, and all of that. And who goes in front of the audit committee and shares all the company risks every quarter to the board? It's the CIO. So why would we look at Gen AI any differently? We should look at it the same. The other thing I want to say here, you showed the MIT Sloan study with the 5 job responsibilities of these new AI roles. Go back and read them. Take the words AI or generative AI out of it. What do they read? Steering the strategic direction and alignment of work. Establishing and sustaining a collaborative ecosystem. monitoring and evaluating experiments to inform best practices, identifying high impact use cases for scalability, overseeing integration across business units. What does that sound like? That sounds like the role of an IT person. And what drives all of the AI work? AI is basically a field of study that's been around since 1956. The term was coined by John McCarthy, a computer scientist out of Stanford, in 1956. This is, older. It's one of the oldest fields of study in technology. It's been around forever. We act like this is new and came out 2 years ago. It's been around for 60 plus years, right?
Okay.
It is reliant on data.
Well, we're gonna get to that one a little bit later. So let's get Sajid in here. Sajid, is there anything Girish didn't mention there?
I feel like, do I need to say more? I mean, I should drop the mic, and I think we should just get the win for IT. But to Girish's point, IT should own it, just because, I mean, business should do the pilots of these applications, but ultimately we want IT to own it, because we don't want an explosion of software, just every business unit's just buying it. Coming from Salesforce, I actually did a mapping of all the tech needed to drive the salesforceweb.com site, and just the number of technologies used to drive that website and the redundancy was just staggering. Even this SVP was taking pictures. He's like, this is massive. This is insane. So IT needs to be involved owning the technology, because we want to make sure that if there is software that we've already procured, we want to make sure that other business units can leverage it. And also we want to make sure we're thinking from an enterprise level and not just a business unit level. And we're thinking from a cost perspective as well.
All right. Well, let's see what the other side has to say. Stacy and Brooke. Stacy, apparently IT needs to control everything, including Gen AI, and it's all about the technology, and it's an end in of itself. I think that's a fair summary of what they just said. But why don't you tell us why you think the business should be running this?
Well, it's interesting. I actually had my initial response planned here, but Girish made an excellent point that's just going to slam dunk it for us. This technology has been around for 60 years. Why hasn't anyone been using it? Well, it wasn't evolved until a fact that the business could get involved, own it, and our business leaders have evolved to understand more and more technology. No one on this phone as a business leader would be able to be successful at their digital commerce adjacent jobs if they didn't understand technology. So guess what? Business got involved, business took ownership, and Gen AI has exploded in the last 2 years. Everyone's talking about it because now it actually can get out of the basement and into the hands of the people who can actually drive results with it. So that was my first, just wanted to set that out there. But I think the simple piece of it is business has always owned defining the requirements for technology systems. IT does not simply have the understanding and the business objectives strategy to know how to define those requirements. It always comes down to the business. And hey, we have to partner with IT. IT has to build those platforms for us. But AI, Gen AI, it's just another technology platform that is owned by the biz. It's like CRM, it's like your marketing automation. I've encountered organizations who, when digital commerce was nothing but a nascent technology, IT was owning it. And we didn't unlock digital growth until the business took it over. And all of a sudden, digital commerce is now growing at 50 to 100%. So for those reasons and many others that we'll talk about, the business should own Gen AI.
All right. Well, Brooke, I think you would agree with most of that. Anyone add to it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think with what Stacy said, right, if technology owns this, what you really have is a solution looking for a problem. The business team is the one that can ensure Gen AI or really any other initiatives are aligned with the company's goals, with our strategy, with our customer needs. I think I really read those job descriptions much differently than Girish did, right? The business team is the one that understands the market. They understand the pain points. They understand the opportunities, the outcomes that need to be achieved. They're the ones focused on the problems that need to be solved and the value created, right? And just to talk a little bit about cost, Gen AI is a really expensive technology. Who is responsible for ROI? It's not the technology team, it's the business. So they set clear KPIs, measures of success, ensure things with the most value are prioritized, not the things that are the most fun that the IT team wants to work on.
I love that. The most fun. How are we doing on time, Brian? Do we have a minute or two?
You got about 35, 40 seconds left.
All right,
Go.
let me jump in here.
Okay, go ahead, Girish.
30 seconds, Girish.
Yeah, I think both Stacy and Brooke did not dispute it's just another technology. They both said that. So, they're giving away their argument here. Yes, business owns the business requirements, does not own the technology. They want the IT team to own the technology. That's what they're saying. You don't really have an argument here.
Wow.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's not you turn on the technology and it's working for you. You're always going to reach out to IT to say, hey, can you integrate this for us? Can you change it up somehow? So at the end of the day, we're thinking from it, and I'm coming from a lot of different companies where we've owned the technology from a cost perspective. So that's how I see a lot of businesses kind of moving this towards IT, because we can't just let business units just buy stuff. And who's going to support
Ultimately,
it?
money
Are you
comes
going to
from-
have a shadow IT supporting your business unit with this particular software that you just bought?
Go ahead, Brooke. You want to get a final comment, and we have to move to the next round. But what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately funding comes from the business, right? We have to make sales, we have to generate revenue to fund these initiatives. So funding comes from the business. We choose where to spend the money.
All right. Well,
All right. We got to go to
you put
our
a point
poll
on it
question.
there.
We're out of time. Let's go to our poll question for round one. Folks, take a minute to vote. Is Gen AI a technology to be managed by IT or a business enabler managed by the business? Vote Gen AI one way or the other. IT or business, up on your screen. Andy, just another tech platform. And I quote from Miss Hurricane Hanks, just another tech platform. I don't agree. It's just another tech platform. This is a revolutionary change in across the business how companies can use technology. In terms of in all kinds of applications. We're going to get into this in our next round. I don't think it's just another technology. I mean, I think there's analogies to some of the things that have been adopted in the past, like CRM and ERP, or not ERP, but e-commerce platforms and things like that, where there's been some there's some foundational elements, but this can be used everywhere in the business for so many different things. IT has to own it. But what did you think?
I think you just made the point. It's going to be used so many places across the business that it really requires a concerted, integrated effort on the part of the business to understand the costs, the considerations, the challenges. You can make an argument that the IT team is basically a means to the end here. And yeah, maybe they're managing some of the cost of this stuff, but as Brooke pointed out, at the end of the day, the funding is going to come from the business because it's all about the revenue generated by customers. It's not about building, I don't mean this in a negative way or pejorative way. It's not a science project. It's designed to make something happen. As Stacy pointed out, I think quite well, things become reality when they come out of the basement, she said, and move into the business. And so when it crossed the line and became a business driver, it's hard to argue that it shouldn't be the business that's managing and owning.
I'll put you take your hallucinating crazy box crazy company that's producing all kinds of weird products because of your AI hallucinations, and put it up against my company that will have more controls because we're going to make this owned by IT. But anyway, let's move on. We got to go to our next round and have some fun here and talk about this issue. Let's go to round two. Ring the bell. All right. Our round two. I'll take this one, Andy, if you want to keep time. This one.
Time.
All right, good. Thank you. This one is all about should Gen AI be controlled by the group that stores the data or the group that leverages the data? And we're going to think here about, for example, applications like search and discovery on an e-commerce site, which needs to obviously index data and do other things and content and other things. So when we think about that, and we're going to go to Team IT first, who should own Gen AI in this case? And Sajid, we're going to give you a chance to chime in first on this question. Go ahead.
Sounds good. Well, as obvious, IT should own the data as well. Just because, we need to be able to manage it, organize it. We need to know where all the data is for the organization itself. Coming from Salesforce, we went through this whole GDPR process where we needed to figure out our privacy for our customers and be able to turn things off. Like, I want to be forgotten. Where is all that data? If we kept that at the business level, then there's no view into where this data is managed. And we won't even know like how well it's secured and organized. So IT owning it makes sense because we want to be able to manage it at an organization at an enterprise level, and also any kind of legislation that comes down, especially around privacy. We're able to we're the owners, so we'll know where everything is and be able to come up with a timeline to deliver and follow the regulations provided by the government. So
Okay.
that's my argument.
All right, good argument. Girish, Silencer, let's hear from you.
Hey, look, there are businesses that have tried to own Gen AI, they've deployed it, and they've gotten sued and lost in court. Air Canada up north to us did that, right? Their Gen AI chatbot hallucinated, created a whole new loyalty program benefit that did not exist, and went and lost in court because of that. So if you're telling me that shadow IT in the business can do those kind of things, you're opening yourself up to those kind of risks. There's a reason why data is secured in companies. There's so many cybersecurity layers to it because we don't want that data to leak. And we grant access to that data through safe, secure, and well directed means, right? That's what IT does all day, every day. There are a whole lot of ways you can use that data, but how many companies out there have data catalogs? Nobody does, or not many do, right? So you need to think about, you can't just open and have every business person access to your databases. What will they do? How will they even know what data is there? Most databases are now encrypted. So are you going to go share all the decryption keys to everyone in your company? Not going to happen, right? There's a whole reason why security is a thing in our companies. So that control, not in the way of I won't let you use it, but that means of monitoring and auditing and tracing is necessary on Gen AI as well. No different than anything else.
Come on, Girish, just another technology. Come on.
Just wait until they get sued, Brian.
A little product liability might solve that. All right, let's go to the other side. Sorry, guys, I'm displaying my bias here. Let's see. Let's go to the business side. And of course, you're going to argue that business should own. And Miss Lights Out Logan, let's start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, and you know what? I think just to clear something up, we're absolutely not saying that we're going to implement shadow IT or not use our IT partners as we do in any normal implementation and to solve a problem, right? But what we are saying is the business is best equipped to drive the bus here. Gen AI is best controlled by the group that uses the data and the group that frankly is going to work cross-functionally to get the data that the technology is using. It's not owned by the team that stores it or regulates it or helps keep us secure. I mean, what are we going to advocate that now security owns every business operational task? No, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. So one, ownership is going to allow the business team to act as that bridge between the technology team and other departments. So merchandising, marketing, sales, ops, they're going to ensure that both the data inputs and outputs are actually quality and are usable. They're going to make sure that the solutions designed are with the larger organizational needs in mind, and that they can actually be operationalized, that they can be integrated into day-to-day operations. The business team is going to communicate the value to the rest of the stakeholders. They're responsible for that. They are absolutely responsible for value generation, and they're responsible for ensuring the technology team is building solutions that are practical and actionable. Again, otherwise, what? You're just off building some stuff. Who cares if it delivers any results for the business?
Wow. All right, Miss Hanks, Hurricane, I'm sure you agree with all that.
Oh, there's a lot to unpack in all of those conversations. But I think what I took away is Sajid and Garish, all they did was continue to provide great inputs on why IT is always our partner, right? IT helps mitigate risk and security. That is IT's core objective, right? We're all here to increase sales, but their real core objective is to mitigate risk. That doesn't mean that they know how to define how outputs are used to achieve business outcomes. It means they mitigate the risk. And in Gen AI, we're still going to need them to generate that risk. But if you think about those first slides you talked about, Brian, Amazon said non-traditional computing tasks. Why should IT own defining the objectives for the output of images? Does the IT team know what type of images sell best online? Have they done that work? Do they understand how to create mobile optimized images? Do they understand why colors have to be the same, or why a 360 degree is more important for one type of a product or the others? That's not IT's job. They shouldn't be owning that. They should be supporting our functional requirements when we say, hey, here's the inputs we're going to use because we have an objective. So we have to own it. It's a non-standard computer task. I look back to the last time the world got this excited about a really big, new, exciting technology that, yes, Brian, did revolutionize the world, was cloud computing. Think about cloud computing. Cloud computing really is a core IT infrastructure, right? It's a place to put all of our stuff. It saved us money in where we stored on-prem, off-prem, in the cloud. So IT did a really nice job of that because the output was just more IT. Hey, instead of putting your data here and getting a software update every three years, we're going to put it in the cloud and you're going to get an update every 3 to 6 months. Great. Stay in your lane, IT. That makes sense there.
Oh.
But now we have this technology where its output is not IT infrastructure. Its output is business objectives. It is the work of humans, right? And we want the business in charge of work that outputs work like humans. We don't want IT in charge of that. We have to have IT. We have to have great relationships. But ultimately, if that output is acting like a human, let's have the business in charge of it where those outputs live now.
Well, clearly in your world, Stacy, if it's only about risk mitigation, then, that's clearly they should stay in their own lane. If that's their own focus.
So,
It's not.
My goodness. Go ahead, Garish.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, we're at time, Brian.
I know, but go. Just real quick, go. 10 seconds.
So struck by my friend Stacy and Brooke here, right? They keep arguing for using the tool as ownership. Using the tool is not ownership. Ownership is about making sure you have the right tooling to go deliver the value generation you need. There are over 5,000 AI solutions out there right now. Do you know which of those 5,000 is the right image generation technology for you and your business? How do you evaluate that? And how do you know that they fit well into the rest of your workflows?
How does IT?
Is what IT does, right?
IT can tell me a
looks
workflow.
at that, evaluates it, and says, these are the tools that fit into our landscape and ecosystem, and this is how they will play nicely with our other tools or don't, and give you those recommendations. And absolutely will let you drive value, but not the other way around.
Said like a true IT person. We'll tell you what works best with our system, not tell you what's best for the business. And I'm here to drive winning outputs that drive the business, not always what's easiest for my IT team.
So is that why 95% of all Gen AI projects owned by the business have failed today?
Whoa!
Another MIT Sloan research study finds 95% of business-owned Gen AI projects have failed today.
Yeah, but I got to jump in on this one. We'd have to see what that means, because are these small projects? Because as we know, and we said at the beginning,
right?
Gen AI is a
right?
test.
Failure is failure.
A test and learn environment. But you could say
Mhm.
Silicon Valley fails 95% of the time, but I think it's done pretty
Mhm.
well overall. It's produced some pretty impressive companies, but 95% of those guys fail too. Anyway, Brian, we have to move to the
We
next
gotta
round.
we gotta go to our poll. Andy, stop harassing our contender. Okay,
There's
let's move to our poll. Should Gen AI be controlled by the group that stores data, IT, or the group that leverages the data business? Place your votes, folks. Andy, very interesting. I think where this really becomes fascinating. And by the way, 100% with Sajid and Curious on this. You let the business run wild, you're gonna have 10,000 applications. Half of them are gonna cause problems. You're gonna have product liability issues. Oh, it's gonna be a disaster. The world's gonna crash down. All businesses are gonna fail. Just exaggerating a bit, but no, seriously, I thought that was a really fascinating back and forth. I think I think particularly as we get into other types of use cases, like, I mean, we're talking about like digital experience, like Stacy was saying, hey, content creation or, image creation. Yeah, sure. Business has to weigh in on that and use that. But, what about things like credit approvals, speeding up credit approvals, where you're dealing with personal information, like credit scores or, information around, all kinds of different, more sensitive stuff like technical product specifications. What if they buy the wrong product and the damn thing's hallucinating? Stuff like that. I don't buy it. IT's got to own it. Done.
Well, one thing I'll say is interesting is I heard the phrase shadow IT come up a couple of times.
Yes.
How come you never heard the word shadow business? Why is it that
Ah.
would it be great if the IT group would, if the business had to run around accusing the IT group of doing too much business thinking?
Okay.
I'll just leave you with that thought.
Whatever. All right, let's go to the next round. Guys, here goes round 3. Ring the bell, kid. All right, Andy, you got this one. We got 8 minutes. Go.
Yeah, this is a good one in that it kind of wraps these together because it talks about, Gen AI is creating a brand for a company because it generates images, it produces words. These are things that are typically, what marketing does, for example, and sales does. And now Gen AI is done on behalf of these people. And so the question is, I don't think anybody disagrees. We have to monitor it and manage it for its trustworthiness. But the question is, who should do that? I mean, Girish made an argument that how do you choose the right tool? How do you know if the right tool is creating the right output, et cetera? I think the business team is going to argue that, hey, we need to be the judge of that. But let's jump in and let's go back to you, Girish. So you think that the IT team has to kind of control the Gen AI here because brand or not, it's a risky value proposition to be just turning the kingdom over to untested, unproven technology. Is this your argument?
More than that. Risk obviously is one part of it. There was a recent survey conducted by MIT Sloan. You might have seen the results. They asked CEOs of companies that have implemented AI or tried out AI on what are the effective use cases that are generating business value. Not one use case came up to 33%. Not a single use case. Whether you're looking at automating repetitive tasks, providing summaries of calls, improving customer experience, creating new content, internal, external communication, none of them cracked 50% effectiveness, which tells you we are in a era where we've got tools. They're great compared to what came before them. 20 years ago, these same text generation tools, couldn't have a full sentence that was grammatically accurate. Now, ChatGPT gives you grammatically accurate sentences. Might be a whole lot of hallucination in there, but it's meaningful. It makes sense to a reader. Whether it is true or not is different. So you have to still have those kind of gatekeeping. There's this whole retrieval augmented generation called RAG that is augmenting Gen AI work, because we all know hallucination is a real problem and we need to solve it. And the only way to solve it is by, putting in vetted, trusted data in front of those algorithms so that we can control what it says.
All right. Sajid, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, as we all agreed that IT owns Gen AI as well as the data. So we it needs to make sure that the data that we put in is trustworthy so that we can deliver the results that business is looking for. I mean, ultimately, I mean, we've been talking about this business saying that they want to own this. Business should be worried about revenue and reducing cost. IT is about reducing costs, and we want to make sure we're selecting the product that works best for the business. These tools are enablers, data is enablers for IT to help deliver the transparency on what they're selling, if it's effective, all of that. That's a lot of responsibility. Why are they trying to get into our world? Stay in your lane, as Stacey mentioned, and drive revenue. But as it comes down to trustworthiness, there are tools out there that they're building. We're trying to get beyond the hype of Gen AI, and we want to make sure that these tools are actually helping the business and making sure about whether the trusted content that's coming out. I'm not sure business is going to go through and check, oh, is this trustworthy on every piece of content that they're actually using the tool for? There needs to be some automation that needs to be built in to help prevent these hallucinations, as you mentioned, to
All
kind of
right.
help, make sure that at least their confidence level is high.
All right. So Stacy, you're up here. Apparently the IT team is not going to be responsible for the brand of the company as well. This seems to be the argument they're making because that's what a brand is. It's a promise that you make to your customers, and IT says, "Oh, we'll handle that." Your thoughts?
Yeah, but then doesn't want to be responsible for it. I think where we are today currently in Gen AI, no one can guarantee whether or not a Gen AI model will hallucinate, right? But I look and I say, okay, if IT owns the input but doesn't want to be responsible for the output, who ultimately owns and controls that brand and owns the sign off? It's the business, it's the marketing team, right? It's that there has to be that final check to make sure that something that rolls out to customers is the right thing. And if I had to take it past the hallucinations, because I don't think that's going to be productive one or the other, right? Because of where we are today. But think about your biggest customer. Think about hands down the biggest customer who pays most of the bills at your company. You have a meeting with them. Of course, you bring in supply chain. You bring in the EDI and tech team. But as the business, you're the quarterback. You're ultimately responsible for how that customer perceives your brand, your business, and every output that you control. And who's the last person before anything gets to that customer? It's not supply, it's not the tech team, it's not IT, it's the business. It's that sales and marketing partnership and that leadership that owns that final end. And therefore, they own anything that is going to that customer, whether or not IT helped mitigate the risk to ensure the data inputs were good. Absolutely, we partner with IT for that. But at the end of the day, who's on the hook sitting across the table from that biggest customer? They've got to own the outputs.
All right. Well, Brooke, I'm sure you agree with that. Bring it home here. You get the final word.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think, right, as our opponents have said, Gen AI definitely raises concerns about fairness and transparency and accountability and all of those things. But like Stacy said, the business team is actually closer to the societal and regulatory concerns, and they can take ownership of compliance and really ensure that any of these Gen AI initiatives or any other initiatives are aligned with our company's values and our image and our brand. And I also am sure the technologist here will be offended, but the business team is also faster and more agile.
Oh,
So by owning this, the business team can quickly pivot and adjust and scale projects as market demand shift, as legal requirements shift, as new opportunities emerge. So they need to be in a driver's seat. So just like Stacy said, while the technology team is critical in building and maintaining tools, the business ultimately owns it because they're best positioned to make sure that our investments are driving tangible value.
All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you, everybody, for your insightful statements. Brian, we have to go to the poll.
we do.
Round
Let's
three.
go to the poll. All right, let's go ahead and bring that up, Gabe. Should Gen AI be risk managed as a brand builder by IT or business? Place your votes, folks. We have about 2 minutes here. Andy, man, run fast with the business and run straight into a wall. 95% of businesses, business Gen AI projects, quoting Mr. Silencer Sahukar, those projects fail. Sure, you can run fast, you can fail fast, but what's the result? There's no business result. Okay.
But could you argue that perhaps the IT group, who is constantly saying no to anything new and different, was holding back the business from actually, seeing the results of this stuff? I mean, if you put guardrails on things and don't let people do what they need to do with it, then are you anybody surprised that you don't see positive results from it? I mean, if they hand you something and say, okay, there's 20 things you can do with this, you're only allowed to do one. Gee, who's shocked when it doesn't work?
Well, I don't know, Andy. I mean, I kind of, maybe you worked back in the 1950s. Maybe that's where you're living because, today's IT professionals are progressives, like our contenders today on Team IT. They're thinking forward thinking. They are not saying no to everything, and the risks are big here. This is not just another technology. It needs to be managed carefully. And the applications are in so many places, Andy, for Gen AI. And it's not just about e-commerce. This is about all kinds of other things. And there has to be a governing body. And frankly, my opinion, IT needs to be that governing body because the risks are great across many different categories. Maybe someday that won't be the case.
Yeah, but you have to be honest and say that all this stuff has to map to a business outcome, a return. And so ultimately, if that's where it's going to end up, that's probably
That
a good
assumes
place.
that IT can't do math.
That's a good place to start. If it's going to end there, you might as well start there. And if you start there by saying, okay, what's the outcome we're expecting from this? You don't start with, let's have a tech evaluation to understand all the details
You're
of the
underestimating
capability of it
IT.
all. I mean,
You're
it's the same advice.
underestimating IT.
It's the same advice I give companies about acquiring an e-commerce platform. They all want to start with the features and functions and dig into the dials and figure out what it can do. And I'm like, what are you going to use it for? Start with that. And I use the analogy of a car. I've said this many times. What matters when you want to buy a car is how you're going to use the car. Not that the car has tires and an engine and that the engine's tuned properly. Yeah, those things matter, but only insofar as they accomplish the end of using the car to do something. And I think that's what Brick and Stacy have been arguing, is that ultimately the business has to own this because the business owns the relationship with the customer and they own generating revenue and profit from those customers.
You're completely underestimating IT, and you don't think they can make a business case. Let's bring Sanjay. Can you come back in here? Let's hear from you on this. Let's get a final closing argument from Sanjay. Can you come back in here?
Yeah, no. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
all right, great. No, I mean, this has been interesting. I do see that both sides playing a role here, obviously. I'm not saying that IT initially should not own this. I mean, business should be the driver in terms of piloting the software. And once we understand if it's getting the outcomes that they're looking for, then there needs to be a conversation with IT to do through the process that we put in place to validate and make sure that how the software is being used or the software, how it's using our data is secure. Now, if you don't, and obviously that process is a slow process because we don't want to rush through this. And if there is ever a security leak, we need to make sure we've done our process and we followed it. Because you don't want to come out from a press release that, oh, yeah, security leak, we didn't really do anything other than just take our vendors' notice that this is what they've done. IT has to go through the process of making sure that everything is validated and the data that they use or Gen AI uses is also organized in a way that it can give the business outcome. Now, I've always been, like, not to say that we are the ones that are coming in saying, oh yeah, you want a tech, we're going to give you, like, we're going to go through this process before you're able to understand it, even if it's going to meet your business requirements, right? So we are there to partner with business to make sure that the tools that they've selected is not only safe and secure, but it also meets their requirements. And I've always been in a situation where when a tool is selected, it also needs to be customized and changed for the business as well. Like this, even like CRMs, right? out of the box. They're like, great, but I need these additional adjustments. IT has to own it. We have to staff it. We have to control the cost as well.
So a bit of a kumbaya there. Thank you. I'm sure you see this all the time at Algolia. When you're working with your customers. So thank you for that, Sajid. So Andy, we're coming up on time here. So we're just any final thank you for that, and thank you to Algolia for sponsoring us today. Let's talk a little bit about your couple of takeaways, Andy, before we get to our poll results. We're about to that. Anything, maybe one thing that our audience can take away from this debate today?
I think I made the point. I think it's that ultimately this maps to the business outcomes. And, I don't want to diminish, we're having fun here. I don't want to diminish the role of the IT group, my kumbaya moment. Obviously, if you were driving a sports car and it had a super powerful engine, you wouldn't just hand the keys to a kid who's never been trained.
Right.
So you do want the IT team to validate these technologies, but validating the technologies is different from owning the technologies. And so I would say that, in my opinion, the business should be owning Gen AI, but working closely with the IT team to make sure that the technologies are what they say they are. And so there's this validation process that I think IT needs to be very closely associated with, more so than other technologies where you don't need that level of validation. You have to validate the CRM is going to work. You have to validate if the e-commerce is going to work. I mean, beyond basic testing, this is an ongoing process to make sure that Gen AI is not taking the business in a different direction.
Yeah, I think there's enough risk here where AI has to play a very significant role, even if it doesn't own the budget for it. But let's hear what our audience had to say. This was a really great debate today. So let's go ahead and pull up those poll results. So our first. Oh, forgot about our dramatic decision music. Wow. Okay. So let's go to the first poll result and see what they folks said. Is Gen AI technology to be managed by IT or a business enabler? Business enabler. So the business won. Question 1. Okay. All right. So I'm 1/3 to a loss here, guys. Let's see here. Let's go to the second question. Second question was, should Gen AI? Oh my gosh.
Ooh.
Oh.
We've never had a 50-50 tie
We've never had this before. 50-50, controlled by the group of stores of business or the group of leverages. So the last question will determine the winner of the debate for all time. Oh, that's a shocker.
So we've got a tie.
Wow, managed by IT. No, we don't have a tie, dude.
No, business won the first one.
Oh, you're right. We do have a
IT
tie.
won the last one.
Oh my gosh,
it's
you're
an
right.
exact tie.
Oh my gosh, this has never happened before.
We've never had a tie before.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh, you're right. It's a tie. Okay, we're gonna have to do something maybe on our Friday 15, Andy, to break the tie or something.
We have to break the tie because we're not. This is not a European soccer.
No, that's right.
We're not going to end in a tie and everybody clap and wave to the crowd. We have to have a winner. This is America.
That's right. That's right. So maybe we'll have to have our contenders still on. I think they are. We can't go for another hour, guys. Sorry.
Wow, I didn't see this coming.
Yeah, no, for sure not. Well, folks, this is fascinating. So we can't declare a winner. We're going to have to find a way to break ties. So stay tuned for that. I want to say thank you to our panelists and to Algolia for participating in this. You guys have been great. A couple quick announcements before we break. Folks, this will be recorded. It has been recorded and will be available for playback both on our website, and anyone who registered will get a copy of this. Please share it with your friends and family and colleagues. And then finally, we want to let folks know that we have a couple things. One is the forum, which is a free online place for practitioners to join, practitioners only, where you can share comments, talk about issues like Gen AI and many others. There are conversations happening there every day. We have hundreds of people in the forum. You should come in and join it. Go to our website, masterb2b.com, and sign up for the forum. And finally, we're going to be at the B2B Online Conference just next week, November 17th and 18th. We have several dinners at that event. They're mostly full, but I think we have space for a couple more people at our dinners on Sunday and Monday night. And we hope to see you at the conference in Orlando, Florida. It's going to be a great event. We're having another debate on stage as well at that conference. So I hope to see you there. Folks, thanks for joining us today. We're up on time. So we'll see you on our next Unwebinar debate. Thanks for joining.